This is what dashing back and forth normally looks like. And this is what it looks like right now in the experimental queue with the backdash overhaul. Today I'm going to talk all about that, how exactly backdash works, my first impressions of this new backdash, and what this means for the future of Brawlhalla, which, spoiler alert, it's actually completely game-changing. Alongside that, I'm going to throw in any tips and tricks that pop into my mind, some neat little interactions that are only possible with this new dash. I'm actually watching this footage live back alongside you, so anything that pops into my brain is fair game here. But let's talk about what is happening on the screen, and this clip is perhaps the most blatant, which is that backdash right now has lag. You can see it takes a little bit of time to move after you're backdashing, and this proposed change completely eliminates that. It's essentially turning backdash into a forward dash, and part of that clip right there, why I'm able to jump so fast, is because backdash right now has some turnaround time. I believe it's 3 frames, and if you're trying to turn around and dash within 3 frames, you're going to get that slow backdash. But this one is way faster. You can see it's so much faster because I'm able to get a chase dodge off of a backdash, which you just cannot do in the game currently. So it's speeding everything up, and you can freely cancel into attacks. You saw that in some of the earlier clips. And this is backdashing off of a platform, another example where you can just see the speed. And if we're talking about speed, yeah, there's this little neat dash trick you can do that of course is going to be way faster if you can cancel it immediately and then just leaping off of platforms back and forth. It's a little bit crazy. It's a little bit nuts. Right now, we're going to watch some of the footage of my first time ever using it. So I didn't practice any of that stuff, any of the fancy schmancy techniques. I literally just jumped in and immediately felt a difference. You can see right here, I'm canceling my backdash into a downlight. That is just not possible in the current game. And throughout these series of clips, there's going to be some, like I said, interactions that are only possible with this new backdash. And I'll try and point those out as we get along here. But what about my first impressions? What do I think about this? Well, like I said, this is my first time ever using it. I have about 1 hour of gameplay with this new backdash. So take everything I'm saying with that in mind. 1 hour of gameplay. But even then, even with only 1 hour, I can tell you right now that this is absolutely broken. And I do not think this is going into the game as it currently stands. And that's really important, right? As it currently stands, because this is 100% game breaking. It just is. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's game breaking in the sense that it breaks our normal conventions. More accurately, I should say, it's game changing. And yeah, I do think this is broken to the point of needing to be toned down, but that's also fine because that's how they implemented it. The devs even said on the dev stream, look, this is going to be the most extreme version of this backdash. It's never going to be faster than this. And if this is broken, we can tune it down. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Some of these things where you can instantly land on the ground and then within 1 frame turn around and jump, there's going to be a couple clips here where I show that. I think it's going to be later in the video. And you just can't react to that. And part of that reaction, it's not that you can't react to it as in that's a bad thing. Like if you're playing the video game online, the person is teleporting. And so that's something they're going to need to tone down. But otherwise, I mean, this is, it feels amazing. Like it feels great. What can I say? Okay, here, right, look at this. I backdash, instant cancel GC. You just can't do that. You just can't do that in a normal game. Like the ability to get out a down sig from that position is not something that you can ever expect in the current game. And so you have to completely change the way you think about things. And this is sort of the idea of this backdash, right? This movement and the utility it gives you, you can see right here, I'm just doing a little bit of goofing with the Nai, and that instant turnaround jump into the Nair I did, not possible in the current game. You really have to change how you think about movement and positioning and spacing. And I think one of the concerns that I do have about this is that it can give you so much freedom of movement that it kind of, how do I put this? It supersedes the individual ability to attack, in that attacks themselves have a certain amount of lag, and they take a certain amount of time, and they're slow in comparison to the freedom of movement you get with a hyperspeed back and forth dash that doesn't really matter which direction you're pointing in. You don't have to commit to facing forward, because facing backward isn't gonna punish you at all. And that creates this situation where maybe movement is so strong and so powerful that it's not worth it to throw out attacks. Throwing out an attack is too risky because someone can just punish you from any position. Something like guns right now. Backdash is kind of dangerous on guns, especially because they have those dead zones and people can just lock you down, but if you can just, I don't know, instant position and instant attack out of it, not really too big of a deal. And there's gonna be a handful of clips here that you may not even notice. Like that jump, for example, that I did. Also not possible in the current game, but it's such a, like a small moment. I mean, it's a fraction of a second. That end light, I can't hit that in the current game. I feel like I've said current game so many times now, but that's sort of the point, is this is a test feature. It's changing everything. Yeah, I think the primary concern that people may have is that it will increase the power of passive play, because you're able to just completely avoid combat for longer and throwing out attacks is riskier. And that's something that I think we should be thinking about. But also, I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily worth thinking about too hard, because this is so new. And it's also probably not going live in this current state, so it's really hard to gauge. The reason why I'm saying that is multifold. Well, number one, the latency stuff that I was talking about earlier, where you're just jumping around, you can start to lag on people's computers, but also people's consoles. And that's the other thing, is that, of course, I'm having a ton of fun with it right now, but I'm also a keyboard player, and I'm able to click every single key at once and give myself carpal tunnel, while a controller player likely would not be able to have that same kind of APM, because you can't move the stick as fast as you can click the key. And maybe a D-pad will be better than that, but still, there is a big amount of variability there. And for the longest time, ever since Brawlhalla's creation, they've tried to make keyboard and controller as equal as possible. And I think super hyper fast options that require insane APM, it starts to mess with that a little bit. Now, of course, it's not the craziest thing in the world. I mean, people still primarily play Melee with a GameCube controller, but so much of... I can't believe I caught that weapon. So much of Brawlhalla is like instant accessibility, and so that, I think that may be a concern as well. But with all of that out of the way, again, this is still my first hour of playing it, it was incredible. I had to completely re-modify my brain. I mean, clearly you can see I'm a complete dumbass. But I have years of muscle memory with backdash timing, with my fingers backdash timing in my brain, and having to completely reroute that is a challenge. It is, but it's also really exciting and fun because I've played Brawlhalla for a long time, so having this unfamiliarity is a novel stimulus. Also, check this out. Instant land reversal, that's the one frame I'm talking about. That's the one frame. I try to do that in live game, I get a backdash in insta-die. Don't ask what I'm doing. Did I say novel stimulus too? What are the words coming out of my mouth? Okay, look, Bryn is the last on the first row, which means I'd already been playing a handful of games. You can see why I stopped recording after only a couple, because I start going off the rails a little bit. And speaking of off the rails, let's get back on topic, because this is really just my first impressions. And if I were to sum it up in one sentence, it would be, this is extremely fun and extremely satisfying, but I also think right now, as it stands, it probably needs to be toned down a little bit. What would that look like? I think maybe increasing the turnaround time from like 1 frame to 2, 3, something like that. Something that makes it so you don't lag on people's screens is a big thing. That's one of those things that's like, in an ideal world, Brawlhalla would have 0 latency, and then we would have no lag in online video games, and we could have as free movement as we want. But it is primarily an online game, and I think there is a compromise that needs to be made there. Otherwise, the backdashing, maybe the window for backdashing and dashing back and forth gets changed as well. I don't really know. I feel like this is one of those changes that, because it's so dramatic to the identity of Brawlhalla, which I don't even know if I went into that much, but just the fact that you can attack out of positions that you literally could not before, that changes everything. It just changes everything. Including the timing on the spacing on that side stick. Like, if I just knew a little bit more, maybe, if I had practice. But that goes into the next point, which is balance. Moves like that side stick, like Qatar side light, like bow, especially bow on the ground, they can kind of get mega buffed when you get a buff in movement options. And so that sort of feeds into the larger point, which is that there's a lot to consider. When you're changing something this fundamental to the game, it only makes sense that the whole game is affected. What we really want is them to look at it stepwise, like adjust the turnaround time. and then adjust the other stuff, as opposed to, okay, here's this new fun toy we can all use, it's nice and great, change everything about it instantly because it's very strong, instead of easing us in a little bit, because moving around, dashing around is a lot of fun. Looks like I'm out of footage. I'm sorry this was a mess, but I just want to get back to playing.